Hello, and welcome to Disrupt Your Now. You know how a lot of entrepreneurs are successful yet unfulfilled? This show is for you. It's a chance for you to learn from other entrepreneurs, learn from the mistakes they've made and what they've done to make their business more fulfilling. Tonight, I have a wonderful guest, Bart Butler, another Hokie.
Yes.
Bart grew up in DC back when the crime was really bad in the time that he was growing up. And miraculously, he made it through alive, made it to college, grew up, went to Virginia Tech, very successful in real estate. And then he lost it all during the crash of 2008. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Bart. I want you to tell us about your background and how you got to how you are today. And then we'll talk about your businesses that you own now and your book and everything. Okay?
Okay. Well,
Welcome
first,
to the show, Bart.
thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to come on, and always love talking to fellow Hokies. Chat about the book a little bit and share my story. As you mentioned, I grew up in Northeast Washington D.C. during the '70s and '80s, and it was a very violent period of time when Washington was going through some major drug trafficking. The and I was My mom came here from New Orleans, married my dad, who was in the Air Force, and there were eight of us, five boys and three girls. And
Wow.
out of the five boys, I'm the only one to live past the age of 30, which kind of
That's
shaped my
amazing.
past. Yeah, I mean, um, it doesn't phase me the way it used to.
Mhm.
Now I kind of say it matter of fact. But
Yeah.
growing up, I had a lot of fear that I wouldn't live past 30, even when I
Yeah, of course. I can't even imagine. I cannot even imagine that.
Now, I still remember when my brother died at 29.
Uh,
I was at Tech, and I was taking the bus home, and I was just thinking about, all that went on. And it got to the point where I didn't even want to hear from anyone at home because it was an issue of, well, who got shot or who died.
yeah.
And you just wanted to go into Blacksburg, allowed me to really escape and get away.
Mhm.
Um, so that's the backdrop of how I grew up, and I was able to get out. My mom worked for the Department of Defense, and her boss was a colonel in the Army,
Mhm.
and he suggested that I go to Virginia Tech, and I actually had never heard of Tech, and I went down for a weekend and fell in love with it. Funny story, I actually thought it was an HBCU because I went for minority orientation weekend.
Oh, okay.
So all I saw were black kids and minority kids. So when I went back in the fall, I definitely had culture shock.
Yeah,
But,
definitely, because, like, 25,000 kids and back
exactly, it was
then.
25,000, and there
Yeah.
were 200 of us. So it was quite a culture shock. But
Wow.
it was some rough few months. But one thing that my mom always stressed was diversity and acclimating yourself. And so it took a while. I think it was harder. The racial diversity wasn't such a big deal as it was being away from home for the first time. So
Yeah,
I had to adjust to that.
and in such a different environment, because even
Right.
though there's the positive thing about being away from crime, you grew up in a big city and all of a sudden you're in a basically a tiny village in the mountains.
Correct. Yes, with cows and stuff I'd never seen before. I mean, he's just surrounded by farms, so there was definitely an adjustment. But one thing I loved about Virginia Tech was it had a great support system, and I quickly got plugged into all of the student organizations, and that really shaped my future. Going to Blacksburg really, really helped, and get me a good start and a good foundation for my business career that was to come.
That's awesome. I love it. Love hearing success stories out of our school.
That's one of the reasons why I'm so active now. I'm on two boards. I'm on the Apex Center for Entrepreneurs, and I'm also on the Pamplin School of Business. And then we have the scholarship that we're endowing. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the book because proceeds go to benefit the scholarship for African American male students from DC to Baltimore that
Uh,
want to go to Blacksburg. So I want to give that opportunity to someone else, just like I got it. I don't know, 40 years ago. A
wow, it's hard to believe it's that
long
long.
time ago,
Look how
yeah.
young we are. Look at
I know, right?
how old are you
Exactly.
though.
I
But
certainly feel young.
I think it's so great that you're doing that scholarship, and it's partially in memory of one of your friends. Is that right?
Yes, Brian Keith Roberts. He passed away about 5 or 6 years ago from brain cancer,
Mm.
and he and I actually, another great story. We grew up in the same neighborhood, right across the street from each other, and
Oh,
never knew each other. Um,
wow.
yeah, it was crazy. I actually used to pick up his sister because she was a cheerleader and I played football. And he
Mhm.
went to another school that was out of our district, and I never got to meet him. I always heard about her brother, but never got to meet him. And our respective dads were drinking buddies, so they would meet on the corner and talk. And one summer day before we both arrived on campus, they got to talking, and they were bragging about their respective sons going to Virginia Tech. And
Oh,
they actually got
funny.
into an argument because they were like, "No, my son's going to Tech, not your son." And so they each came and got us, and that's how we met. So we met
Oh,
on the corner, and I was like, "Oh, you're Bryant,"
oh,
and he
that's
did
so
the
funny.
same thing. And we became instant best friends. We were roommates. He actually is the one that got me to get active in the organizations because he was always very active. And we started the Black Student Alliance. I was the first president,
Oh, wow. Cool.
and we started the NAACP. A lot of the organizations that are there today, a group of us who came in '79 and '80, actually started those organizations, and they're still there today.
Oh, that is so cool. And see, we were there at the same time. I was there 79 to 83. So I remember those being there, and I did not realize that they weren't there before.
Yeah, no, they there was a cultural arts organization that we changed it to become the Black Student Alliance, and
Okay.
that was approximately, it was 1980 when we did that.
Okay.
And we brought Nikki Giovanni, who became a tenured professor.
Oh,
That was when I was there. So we actually,
she's the poet, right?
poet, correct?
She's
Yes.
amazing.
Yeah, she is. She really is. It's great to see that a lot of the things that we started are still going today. And again, I wanted to have a great impact. I think, Virginia Tech did such wonderful things for me. I grew up there. I learned so much perseverance. You know, I learned a lot at Tech about that, especially in business and meetings, and because we were very active. I actually spent more time in student organizations than I did studying. That's why it took me 5 years. So I got out in
Well,
'84, although we were
at
in the
least
same
you were
class.
spending at least you were spending your time in student organizations instead of partying like some of us. I won't call any names, but
Oh, yes, yes.
I
I, I,
used to
I
drive
got
my
that in too a little bit.
I used to drive my parents crazy because I learned very, very easily, and
Hmm.
I'm really good at taking tests. So I always, as long as I got B's, I was happy. And it used to
Ah,
drive
yes.
my father crazy because he's like, if you would just try. And so now my college roommates think it's hilarious because now that I love what I do, I'm like learning all the time on my own. But when I was, I majored in accounting and I
Ah,
was
okay.
really good at it, but it's not like it was something that turned me on.
We
Uh,
were both in business for Pamplin then. I was my degree was in finance.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yep. So we probably even had some classes together.
I'm sure we did. Definitely.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sure we
funny.
did.
Yeah, that's funny that we started there at the same year. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
try to get back as much as I can.
yeah. Well, we have a cabin over at Catawba. I don't know if you know where Catawba is. The Home Place restaurant was there. My
Yes.
father grew up there, and so we have a
Okay.
cabin there that my parents bought when I was like 5. It was my great uncle's house. So when we're up there, we try to get over to Tech, but a lot of times we just have so much
Going
housekeeping
on.
stuff. It's hard to get over there, but I miss it so much. I love Blacksburg.
Yes, yes, I do too.
Yeah.
Definitely will be back this spring. We've got board meetings and a few other events. So And we might reschedule the reunion that
Oh,
we
okay.
missed during COVID. So
Okay.
there's definitely going to be some opportunities to get back. But I love the campus, and I'm just hoping that this scholarship and the book, we've made international bestseller,
That's awesome.
which is great. So now I'm hoping through podcasts like yours and the media interviews. We were on TV a few months ago live in the Fox network here,
Oh,
and we've been on radio. So just getting the word out and hoping that we can get this scholarship completely funded and
that's
start
awesome.
making some
And the
awards.
book is your story of redemption, right? Your life story and redemption. So it's telling your story for other people to learn from, and then the profits go to endow this scholarship
Correct.
in honor of your
Exactly.
friend.
Yes.
So tell the audience about your backstory, because they're probably thinking, well, what does he need to be redeemed from?
Well, growing up in the environment that I grew up in, you're exposed to a lot of negative things.
Yeah.
As I said, youngest of five, youngest of eight, and one of five to live past 30. And the reason why three of my brothers died violently is because crime pretty much was the family business.
Oh, wow.
I mean, from drugs to back in the day, they called it boosting, which
Mhm.
is basically like a professional thief, so to speak,
Okay.
and all kinds of different things that were normal
Mhm.
because that's what everybody was doing. And so this book is meant to be cathartic for me in some way
Mhm.
because I like to say that growing up in the environment I grew up in, I developed PTSD.
Oh, I
Because,
imagine. Yeah.
I mean, from shootouts in front of my house, my niece got shot.
Wow.
Every day there was something going on to the point where you didn't even go outside. For me, people watch the show The Wire.
Uh-huh.
Well, that was every day for me.
Oh my gosh.
I thought it was the norm. So when I went to tech and I got out and I graduated and I spent a few years working and I started my first business about 3 years after. It was in financial services, and then that quickly led into mortgages and real estate. And I built a mini empire, and but I had no real um, mentors.
Yeah.
So I'm going off of everything that I learned growing up in the hood, and those weren't always best practices. Let's just say
Mhm.
that from a business standpoint,
Yeah.
or from a personal standpoint. I have basically lost it all twice. So
Wow.
98, there was a mortgage collapse, and we were millionaires on paper then. Lost it all, and then rebuilt everything bigger and better. And then by 2008, 2006, we were top five in real estate in the nation.
Mm.
We had title companies, mortgage companies who were building homes.
Wow.
We had about 60 lots under contract, and things were going great. And then basically the market just collapsed
Mhm.
and everything just, I mean, we lost a total of about $4 million in assets.
Oh my gosh.
So, we went from having three homes and a boat and lots of cars and stuff to welfare and food stamps, literally.
Wow.
Um, so this book talks about the lifelong lessons that I've learned, and that material possessions aren't everything.
Mhm.
That don't take your God-given gifts for granted, because I got to the point where I thought, oh well, God gave me the ability to make money, so I can just go and spend it, and not worry about it. I mean, one month I made like $200,000,
Uh-huh.
and it was, and not that I wasted it on gambling or anything like that,
Yeah.
but I had lots of, cars and houses. I mean, we had three houses.
Yeah.
In Florida on the beach in Maryland, and then our primary home. But we always stress education. Both
Yeah.
my kids graduated from private school and went on to graduate cum laude, and I wanted them to have the finest things that I didn't have growing up. But those lessons are things that you kind of, I learned them the hard way, and I'm
Mhm.
hoping that through this book that folks can realize that you don't have to make those same mistakes. You can, the past, your past doesn't have to dictate your future. That you can learn from that and move on, and that's why it's titled Grace Extended, because I feel like God did give me grace because He allowed me to rebuild it and kind of build back better. Well,
Yeah.
that's what I did. It took 7 years, which is biblical.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's where the grace comes in. And the real price of success refers to what it takes to truly be successful and what success really means, and how that definition and the meaning of success changed for me over the years, from just buying things and owning things to really focusing on legacy. And
Yeah.
so that's the lessons that I had to learn. And so I want the book to be basically an example for others, that you don't have to go through what I went through. And so in the book, I talk about systems that I developed over time. Like one of them is called CES,
Mhm.
contemplate, evaluate, and strategize. It's
Okay.
something that I use every day. I contemplate my goals and where I am, and evaluate what it takes to get to where I want to go, and then come up with a strategy.
Mhm.
And I do that every day, all day, in every aspect of my life. I employ that system, and in the book, I kind of go into detail, and so I think it could be something that will help people in figuring out what their why is. And
Yeah, for sure. And there so many people that don't take that time to contemplate and evaluate, much less strategize, because they're so focused on doing, doing, doing. They
correct.
they're
Yeah.
busy all the time and they're just spinning their wheels. And it's because they don't take that time to reflect and figure out. And I'm also really big on making business be about more than money, because,
Correct.
as you know, there's always going to be somebody that has more money than you. So if
Always.
money is the thing, and a lot of people think, oh, once I make this amount, I'm gonna be successful. But what they don't realize is that if that's your gauge of success, nothing is ever enough, because there's always somebody that has more, and then you end up back feeling like you're at the bottom of the totem pole. But if you have bigger goals and bigger desires,
Yeah,
whether
and
it's
aspiration.
helping people, impact, the scholarship, anything like that, that helps the money be secondary, people usually end up happier. And ironically, a lot of times they actually end up more financially successful, kind of by accident, because they're
Right.
doing something that's more meaningful.
Um, right, that you just summarized the book and the process that I went through, and that's exactly why I wrote the book, because after going through all that I've gone through, um, I decided that not only would this writing this book be cathartic and help folks, but it would help me deal with the mistakes that I've made, and to
Mhm.
try to help people avoid those mistakes and to get to their why, and not to focus so much on the money, because um, I finally learned that if money is your why, and if that's your goal, your definition of success, then you'll never really truly be successful, because you never get enough.
Yeah.
And I was definitely chasing the dollars for years and years and years. And as I mentioned, I didn't have a mentor, and that led me into all kinds of problems and issues, legally, financially. And once I realized that, what, it's not about the money, because I got to a point where I had a revelation. I said, well, what's enough?
Right.
We got all these houses and cars and boats. I mean, we had a limo at one time,
Hmm.
and I was never happy.
Yeah.
I never felt satisfied. I remember riding around in a limo with some friends, and it was such a surreal moment that I was it was like an out of body experience, where I just felt like, who is this person? Who are you? And this isn't real.
Hmm.
And it took losing it all to get me to really realize what was most important. And
Yeah.
that's when I started to realize that, what? Legacy, family, because that's the one thing that we did not lose. The family unit stayed together. My wife and I have been married for over 30 years. We have 2 kids, a boy and a girl. Our son is successful, works on Wall Street. Our daughter's very successful. She's in education, married. Her mom is an educator, and so she followed her footsteps.
That's
So
amazing because so many people who go through things that aren't even as tough as what y'all went to, the family just can't make it, because the
yeah,
spouses end up falling apart, being bitter or whatever, and the kids maybe end up getting in trouble. So the fact that y'all made it and you're still together, that speaks volumes
yeah,
to,
still standing.
yeah, it speaks
We
volumes.
had a lot of friends who didn't make it. They got divorced.
Yeah,
They split up, and the family unit split up. But it took losing all of that, all of those material possessions, for me to finally realize, you know what, that stuff really wasn't important after all.
yeah,
And going through that 7-year process of remaking myself and doing it in a different way. So it wasn't about what I could buy and so forth. I still like nice things.
oh yeah,
What's most important now is legacy, and that's why I started the scholarship, because I want to leave a legacy at Virginia Tech, because it was such a great positive impact on my life that I just would feel remiss not to do something, and that's why giving back is so important.
and I think the fact that that the scholarships are for young males in that DC metro area is so great because it's you coming back full circle, Bart.
Yes, correct. Yeah. I remember, when I was a kid, it's about 11. This was when my 29-year-old brother died. And my mom's coworkers, they kind of had been, watching me and watching the family, and offering to help her out. And because they knew what she was struggling with and going through, even though my dad was there, his full-time job was pretty much getting the kids out of jail and stuff like that,
Wow.
and dealing with all the issues while she worked.
Hmm.
So they said, we'd love to have Bart come out to our house in the suburbs. And there was a family, the Kibblers, a white family, who she worked with, and they had me come out to their house. And it was such a great weekend. Turns out their son went to Virginia Tech. He was in Blacksburg, so I got to stay in his room, and
Oh,
we had dinner together, which we really didn't do growing up except for holidays.
yeah.
Um, I played basketball on their basketball hoop, and it was something I'd never experienced before. And I remember like it was yesterday when I got home and they dropped me off. It was a life changing moment, because that's when I first realized that I lived in the hood,
Uh,
and because it was such a stark transition. It
mhm.
was totally different, obviously.
Yeah.
And I remember at that point thinking, I want to really do something with my life. I want to do better.
That's amazing. It gives me chill bumps. And it shows just how much effect we can have on other people just by
Correct.
what are relatively small gestures.
Right.
They
Exactly.
saw that your mom needed a little bit of help and they invited you over. That's a great story.
Yeah. I remember them telling her, he's going to make it.
That's awesome.
And it's, it truly does take a village. And I think if we all have that viewpoint, and again, this scholarship will be, nothing huge, but it'll make a difference.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, through my board memberships, I mentor young upcoming entrepreneurs at Tech. And so I really feel blessed in that way, that God gave me the ability to start businesses. I think I've started about 2 dozen right now.
Wow.
I have 6 family owned companies, and they're all in construction and real estate.
Yeah, I love how within that industry you're so diversified.
Yes, yes. Well, I learned that from the collapse, that putting your eggs all in one basket might not be the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
So when I spent those 7 years of remaking myself, one of the things that I did was to re-engineer or re-architect, as I say, my whole business organization,
Okay.
so that they're sister companies. They support each other, but they're not totally dependent on each other. But they do feed into each other.
Uh-huh. And so before the collapse, were your businesses mostly like you owned a lot of real estate, right? Were you
Yes.
already in construction in the other areas, some of the other areas, or is it mostly actually property ownership and management?
No, we actually had a custom home building company.
Okay.
We had a development company where we bought lots and developed them. So
Mhm.
all of the things that we do now, we were doing then,
Okay.
but they were each separately run companies with separate offices and separate infrastructure.
Okay.
Now, what we do is mostly we consult, and we don't have all of the organizational structure that we had before because it was a lot of mouths to feed. I had a lot of
Mhm.
employees. And this time I wanted to build a business structure that took advantage of all of the experience that I had, but I could do the and operate the business from anywhere. And I would use more of my brain. So instead of building homes, we are construction managers and we build retail fit ups. So right now we're doing a Skechers and a Starbucks and an Aspen Dental, and
Oh,
it's basically construction project management.
that's
So
great.
I don't have any employees other than myself,
Mhm.
and I sub everything out and hire people,
Yeah.
or I sub myself out, and other people hire me
Mhm.
for my expertise.
Yeah.
The real estate services company, we're not a realtor anymore. We don't own a title company or mortgage company, but we started a real estate services website called myrealestatemart.com. And we basically connect people who are looking for real estate services with those that provide it. And then we get a RESPA compliant referral fee.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so it's kind of like Zillow and Home Advisor and Insurance.com all rolled into one. And we're actually re-engineering the whole website now. We're going to do a hard launch end of the year. I'd like to come back because it'll be revolutionary. There's nothing like it on the market. And what I love about that again is I don't have to go into an office every day. It's all web based,
Mhm.
which is great. Which is what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be tied down because I want to be able to travel and work from anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to see what you're doing. That's in my wheelhouse. I've been a web developer since 1995, started
Ah,
the business in 96. And so even back then, even when it was still dial up and everything, that's what I saw. I was like, I can work from anywhere through the web. So even back in 95, 96, I saw that. And so I love helping clients develop disruptive business models and and or helping people realize how they can reach their own personal goals by integrating the web in within their business better. Like you said, work anywhere, create multiple revenue streams,
correct.
all different kinds of things. So I can't wait to see what y'all are doing.
Yes, yes, yes. I look forward to giving you a demo, so to speak.
Yeah. So when y'all rebuilt, you said it took 7 years.
Correct. So the market collapsed and started about '08. By '09, we had pretty much lost everything. And it was kind of systematic. The beach house in Ocean City went first.
Hmm.
Then the house in Boca on the Intercoastal went second.
Yeah.
And then the big house that they called the ESPN house was about 8,000 square feet. That went last. But my daughter, she and her husband, they run the youth ministry at their church. And she gave a testimony and she talked about how many times we moved. And in fact, when she graduated from college, she wrote a paper about I think it was based on the book Who Moved My Cheese.
Oh yeah.
It was her version of that, and it was all about how we stayed together, but we had to move because we moved about 8 times or 9 times in about 7 years or so,
Yeah.
because the finances were shaky, but we kept them in their private schools. That was number one.
Wow, that's awesome.
So they always had a roof over their heads, and always had to stay one step ahead
Uh-huh.
to
Well,
keep.
you showed them what the priorities were.
Yes, yeah,
You know?
and one great thing is they realize that, and
Yeah.
I can tell they're going to be the exact same way. I can tell both of them are going to be great parents, and that they've been able to learn from me and my wife, and from issues and problems that we've had,
Yeah.
and that's what you want. You want so we've kind of been role models and mentors for them, and we've given them that infrastructure so that they didn't have to learn the hard way, so to speak.
Yeah, and when you do have those problems, if you learn from them, it's worth it. It's the
Correct.
people who don't
Exactly.
learn anything and then they keep doing the same thing
Repeating it.
over and over
Yes.
and they wonder
Yes.
what's wrong. Why am I not getting anything different? So
What do they call that? The definition of insanity?
insanity. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Exactly.
it's like you've lived several different lives in
Yes.
one, growing up in the hood like you did, all the loss in your family and, in the neighborhood, and then your years in school. And then, you've crammed several lifetimes into
Yeah.
one part.
That's true. And again, that's why it was important to write the book,
Yeah.
because getting that story out, I used to say, well, we all have a story, and we do.
Yeah.
But that's a story that I felt like deserved to be told. And if I could do it in such a way that it would inspire people, and it could help present some educational opportunities
Yeah.
uh, to other young men like myself at that time, I think it would be well worth it. And so I'm very happy about how the book turned out. It took about 5 years to write it, and it turned out much greater than I could have ever imagined.
Cool. So when you went to tech, you were on a scholarship, right?
Now I had basically we packaged every kind of financial aid we could. We had a little bit of scholarship money, but it's mostly financial aid, Pell grants, this loan, because my parents were low income,
Yeah.
but I did well academically, and of course, I was the beneficiary of some affirmative action goals
Mhm.
that helped as well, and that's why I'm a big proponent of that. I think there's definitely a place in that, because if it not uh, if it were not for that, I probably would not have been accepted into Blacksburg.
Yeah.
And I feel like Tech would have lost out on a heck of an alumni.
Oh, for sure. And yeah, I had Pell Grants, I had financial aid because
Mhm.
my father was blind
Mm.
and he owned a store, but it was a little bitty local, music store, music and appliance store. And
Mhm.
I was telling BK Fulton last week on the show, I didn't even realize until I was like a sophomore at Tech taking sociology and they start talking about income and everything. That was the first time I realized that we were poverty level because I
Wow.
knew we didn't have a lot. Don't get me wrong. I knew we didn't have a lot, but we always had food on the table. And I knew,
Right.
I went to school with kids whose parents were doctors and lawyers. And obviously we didn't have what they had. Um,
So you had
but
your own aha moment.
yeah, and that was the first time I realized it, and I told him the one thing that I learned from that is how dangerous labels can be,
Yes.
because it wasn't so much like shame or anything. It was more like once I labeled myself like that, I started feeling like I didn't belong in certain places.
And that's a very dangerous place to be, because then you start limiting yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that I was able to avoid, and it was because of the confidence that my mom instilled in me, despite your upbringing, your surroundings. This doesn't define you, and
Yeah.
that's something that I talk about in the book as well. And one of my favorite sayings is, "Your past doesn't define you, and it doesn't dictate your future." So
Yeah.
just because you've made mistakes in the past doesn't mean that you have to go on and repeat those, and that will keep you from getting to where you want to be.
Uh-huh.
There have been folks that have committed all kinds of atrocities, and they were able to overcome them. So I'm a strong proponent of that. That don't label yourself, don't put yourself in a box,
Hmm.
don't let other people define who you are.
Yeah. And never give up on yourself.
Never ever
Y-
give up.
No
You know,
matter how bad you mess up, you
correct.
still are worthy of redemption.
Amen. And there you go. There's the title of the book.
I know, I had to throw that in there. So,
Yes.
were your parents still alive?
No, my mom died about 20 years ago,
Okay.
and my dad actually died months after I graduated from tech.
Mm,
When he came on campus, he had trouble walking across the drill field to go
yeah.
to graduation, and he had trouble breathing. So
Uh-huh.
we took him to VA when we got back because he was a veteran, and turns out he had stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh my goodness.
He was a heavy smoker, and he was diagnosed in August of '84 and died December of '84.
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah, yeah. They gave him 90 days. He made it 120 days, but he got to see me graduate.
Oh, that's awesome. That
Yes.
reminds me when I graduated and mom and daddy came up and I mentioned that my father was blind and we noticed he was walking a lot more slowly than he usually did.
Mhm.
And a few months later, he ended up having a heart attack. And
Oh,
see, he
wow.
wasn't saying my chest hurts this, that, and the other week, but we could
No.
just tell
Yeah.
that he was
My dad
walking
didn't either.
slower.
He had been
Yeah,
popping Doan's pills for years because
yeah.
he had a back pain, but really it was his lungs being eaten up. And I think
Wow.
that's just that generation. That's something that they just didn't do.
Yeah.
It sounds like you and I have a lot of similarities. We're at tech at the
Yeah,
same
we
time.
do. We
Wow,
do.
that's awesome.
Now,
That is
and
awesome.
Daddy, he didn't pass away from the heart attack, but in '95, so like 12 years later, he got leukemia and died within a year.
Within a
He found
year.
out in September that he had myelodysplasia, and the day that it was diagnosed as that it had officially gone into leukemia, he died that day. So,
Oh, wow.
and not that much older than me. I'm 60. He was 68 when he died, and I'm like, that's young.
Yeah, yeah. I just turned 60 myself, and my dad was 56. And there was a period of time where I wondered, well, I was really looking forward to it, and I thought, okay, I just got to get past,
Yeah,
the 56,
yeah,
um, and I did, thank God. My mom was 77 when she passed.
uh,
We got to spend a lot of time together.
that's
And that was
awesome.
really a blessing.
Yeah. So tell us some more about the book, or like what your biggest lessons are, takeaways that you might not have spoken about yet.
Well, definitely don't let your past define your future.
Mhm.
Never ever give up. Jimmy Valvano was the coach at NC State, and he died of cancer, and he gave one of the greatest speeches of all time at the ESPY Awards, and he said, "Never ever ever give up." And
Yeah,
so I talk about that in the book, about that sense of just never giving in, never giving up, no matter how many times you're knocked down, matter how many mistakes you make, no matter how many times you fall, get back up and keep going. Because if if you have the right priorities, if you have faith that you can do this, and you have God in your life, then you can certainly overcome anything. And
yeah,
so we talk about that in the book. We talk about the systems, contemplate, evaluate, and strategize. We talk a lot about there's a whole chapter about saying no, which was
uh-huh.
very difficult for me to do. And I still learn how to do that. And I think it's very important that we all learn how to say no, because if we don't, we'll always be saying yes to everything that people bring up, and you'll never really get to where you want to be.
Yeah,
Um, and the giving part, um, that's a huge part. I think there's a whole chapter
uh-huh.
about the importance of community
Mhm.
and giving. So there's a lot of great lessons in there, lots of funny stories. Um, uh, like my meeting my roommate, and my lifelong buddy who the scholarship is in the name of as well. People just it's a great story. It's very inspiring, and everyone it's gotten great reviews, and I think people will definitely enjoy it. And of course, it's for a great cause.
Yeah, and even if you don't have to be an entrepreneur, it is a story for anybody. So
Correct.
many stories within the story that anybody can learn from.
I
I
agree.
want to ask you before we go, do you have any advice for people who may be going through something similar to what y'all went through in keeping their family together? Because it seems like family is one of the first things that goes, because people just can't, they kind of forget how to talk to each other, or they take it out on each other. So do you have any advice for that?
Well, great segue, because I think the communication piece is one of the biggest parts of it, and it's the one thing that really helped us overcome. One of the first things that I did, and my wife was talking about it very recently. She remembers to the day that in 2009, it was in January, when we sat down and I explained, here's where we are.
Mhm.
um, Here's what's going on, and we're going to have to make some changes. Um, these are the things that I think are non-negotiable, which was the kids' school,
Mhm.
but the houses and the cars and all of that will have to go. And she was fine with it, because we knew what was most important. So I think being able to talk openly, to have that candid conversation about what's important and making those priorities, and not being afraid to make those adjustments.
Yeah.
Just step into it, and be flexible, because you might have to have plan B and C and D to get through it. But keep your eye on the prize and just keep going forward. If you take two steps back, then just get up the next day, and then just keep moving forward, because you're going to have days where it's very hard and you think that you're not going to make it. But
Mhm.
you can't have that defeatist attitude. You got to be very positive and upbeat, and just know at the end of the day you're going to make it, and then just keep focusing on the other side
Mhm.
when you have that breakthrough and you get through it.
That's great advice. I can't wait to read the book. I've ordered it.
Oh,
So,
great. Thank you.
yeah, it should be here in a couple of days. So, I'm really excited about reading it. Tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you and to buy the book and support this scholarship.
So we've set up a website called the BartButlerStory.com. And you can go there. You can see, you can order the book. It's on Amazon. You can see the parts of the backstory. You can see all of the media that we've had. So there are links to the TV interviews and podcasts, and we'll be adding yours soon. And then there's also information about speaking engagements, because I really want to get out on the road and speak to groups and kids groups and so forth, and share the story that way, and have candid conversations like we're doing right now.
Yeah,
BartButlerStory.com.
I was going to say, anybody that's listening who is a podcaster or in media or anything, please check that part out on his site so that we can help him get exposure. And I have some friends that I'm going to introduce you to, Bart, that you'll
Wonderful.
be a great guest on their podcast. And I'm sure that that will also help lead to some speaking engagements as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Lisa. It's been great talking to you. This has definitely been my longest podcast. So, I'll probably talk to you soon anyway. I want to start my own, but about politics.
Yeah.
I'm such an avid political junkie, and these days I think it's great to have great conversation, and to be able to share your opinion on either side.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah, to
so
be
that's
able to
something.
share it, be able to share it and talk about it and not get mad at each other. Really
Correct.
have conversation about why we feel the way that we do about, because personally, I think we have way more in common. We all have way
We
more in
do.
common than we have different, and we focus on what is different
as
to
opposed to
the
focusing on
detriment
what
of
we have
the
in
things that
common.
we have in
I
common.
yes, I
Yeah.
agree. I agree.
So
So,
I'm excited. Yeah, I'll be glad to help you with that. And
all right, thank you so much.
I'm thrilled that you came on. And
Me too.
everybody also check out the Apex Center for Entrepreneurs at
Yes,
Virginia
please do.
Tech.
Yes.
And I need to get involved with
Great
that.
work there. Derek is doing such an amazing job. There are so many, tech has grown into a top 25 school for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And we have a fraction of the budget that other universities have. And they have gotten off to a great start. This is the giving month. So please, look for Apex Center in your giving. And if you need a link, you can contact me through the bartbutlerstory.com. I can connect you with the guys to make tax deductible contributions. But we've got some great entrepreneurs that are going to be doing some amazing things over the next few years. A lot of them you'll actually hear about. I mean, things with patents and all kinds of great products that really will make a great contribution to our everyday lives.
That's great. And you're doing so much with that, so much to help the future
Thank you so much.
generations.
Yes, I appreciate
Okay,
it.
y'all, go to the bartbutlerstory.com, order his book, go watch the other podcasts and other media that he's been in. Anybody that you know that he would be a great guest for or a speaker at, please reach out to him and make introductions and help us get the word out about this book and the scholarship that Bart is funding. So,
Thank you so much. Here's the book itself.
yeah.
And you can see international, I think, that way, international bestseller. So we
Yeah,
want to get it bestseller here in the U.S.
definitely. We do. Okay.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much, Bart. I really
All right.
appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks. Bye, everybody. See you
Bye-bye.
next week.